This is Cashflow Ninja. I'm MC Lobster. Thank you so much for joining me in another episode of the Cashflow Ninja. A reminder to check out all of our previous episodes. There's over 650 of past episodes where I interview Cashflow Ninjas. It's all available with all of our community resources, ebooks, and much, much more at cashflowninja.com. That's cashflowninja.com. My guest today is Jason Hartman, someone that I admire, respect, learn a lot from. He's been on the show before. You definitely want to check out that episode because a lot of what Jason shared during that episode is very important in the environment of today. Again, go to cashflowninja.com, type in Jason Hartman, and you'll find him. Jason, great to speak with you again.
Hey, MC, it's great to be here and great to speak with you again. A lot going on in the world since we talked last, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And for our audience, Jason is a uber entrepreneur, and we're going to get into a lot of the things that he's involved in. Very, very knowledgeable and successful real estate investor, runs a bunch of companies, has phenomenal masterminds and more. Jason, let's start with 2020. We haven't spoken this year. What a year, a phenomenal year for a lot of folks, not so much for a lot of other folks. Some thoughts on what happened with regards to the virus, how it was handled, what's going on currently, and what do you see playing out in the rest of 2020 and maybe beyond?
You know, this is a year that many people would like to forget, and for many others, at the same time, it's been a really good year. So it's very mixed. It's a very uneven. I think that the concentration of wealth will even become more severe. Wealth will become more concentrated. And I think that's kind of sad, frankly, because as much as, you know, I've been doing well, you've probably been doing well too. You know, COVID economically has been pretty good for me. I don't, you know, want to live in a world where there's not a big middle class. You know, I think the middle class bodes really well for society. It bodes really well for stability. And right now, we are seeing the country and the world, to a lot of extent, being torn apart in so many ways. So it's, you know, the Chinese have that old saying, may you live in interesting times. And what they meant by interesting times was not positive, you know. But you know, at the same time, there are a lot of very positive things going on. You know, many are trying to say, you know, how far are we into this thing with, you know, the cerveza sickness, or, you know, COVID 1984, as I like to call it. And that's, of course, a reference to George Orwell and the Orwellian world we're moving into even more quickly than before, where we've got surveillance and, you know, all sorts of issues. You know, I'd say we're probably in the third inning, maybe just, you know, in the beginning of the fourth inning. But we've got a ways to go here. And I'll tell you what, I'll share my screen with you and just show your viewers a few charts and graphs that I think will be interesting to them. So on my podcast, The Creating Wealth Show, I'm constantly talking about all of these issues and interviewing, you know, great guests like yourself and so forth. And you know, you can reach us at jasonhartman.com. But this is interesting, this chart. Okay, so this chart shows, in terms of countries, you know, which citizens of which countries would be most likely to accept a vaccine and which ones wouldn't. Right. And you see that China largely brainwashed population, of course, because the government controls so much there. 97% of the people would take a vaccine if it came out tomorrow. Right. And then you move down to the US, which is down on the list. Only 67% would do the vaccine. And then in Russia, only 54%, and they say they have a vaccine. So I guess they don't really trust that vaccine there. You know, so it begs the question: if there is a vaccine, is it going to be effective? Is it going to be safe? And long before this pandemic, there were lots of questions and considerations and concerns about vaccine safety. And I think many of those are very well founded, frankly. You know, and I'm not wearing a tinfoil hat. I'm not crazy. At least I hope you don't think so. But the fact is, there are legitimate scientific concerns about the vaccine problem. So who knows what this one is going to be like, right? We just don't know. It's a big question mark. And even if 100% of the population of planet Earth was willing to do it, how long does it take to vaccinate 7.5 billion people? Billion with a B. That's a lot of people, even if they were willing, right? So, yeah, we're early in this game.
Yeah.
This is an interesting chart too, and it bodes well. It's showing some good news that the labor market is showing real signs of recovery. The United States job market is very dynamic because in the US, even though you may face a lawsuit, you can fire people. Whereas in Europe, you have a very stagnant economy because it's under basically a socialist environment mostly. And if you hire someone in Europe,
CAMAPLAN is one of the leaders for personalized tax-deferred and tax-free IRA planning. CAMAPLAN's team can assist you to take control of your retirement funds and financial future through self-directed investing. They offer support to clients throughout the entire process, from opening your first account to making your first purchase to self-managing your assets. CAMAPLAN works with a growing network of investment providers in all asset categories and offer free investor education through classes, events, and webinars with over 15 years of leadership and self-directed retirement investing. CAMAPLAN will help you unlock a convenient and safe way to manage your retirement investments and discover financial freedom beyond traditional investments, beyond Wall Street, and go from forever taxed to never taxed. Start to take control over your retirement funds and financial future today by visiting cashflowninja.com/CAMAPLAN.
You're stuck with them, even if they're terrible, right? It's really hard to get rid of bad people in many other countries. But in the US, it's more dynamic. And that's a good thing because the market can be much responsive and employers will hire more quickly. So, good news just recently. It's looking like, the job market's definitely improving. Of course, it's very uneven. We all know that. Stock market likely in a bubble. And I don't know that anyone would disagree with that. It's absolutely psychotic what's been happening with the market, but we've pumped much money into all of this stuff, MC, that $5 trillion have been just created out of thin air. And that's definitely going to have a stimulative effect on stocks, housing, everything in the economy, of course. And interestingly, our rich uncle Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, has been very open and explicit that he's just willing to do whatever it takes. You need money? Here's some money. No problem. We're going to stimulate. We're going to help. Whereas, different Fed chairs throughout history would have been more reluctant about that. They would have cited concerns about inflation and so forth. Powell's just like, helicopter money, throw it out of a helicopter. And that's a reference back to a speech Ben Bernanke, our former Fed chair, gave years ago. This is interesting too. And, a lot of good things coming out of this for sure. This is a Zillow survey that says nearly 2 million renters can become homeowners now due to telecommuting. And so off air before we started, MC, you were saying to me that, a lot of the advancement has been just pushed forward. We have really done a lot of things in the economy, adopting technology in our personal lives, et cetera, that would have happened eventually, but they might have taken 5-10 more years. And now everybody's telecommuting and everybody's okay with it. It's not, the technology's not new. Skype came around a long time ago. Zoom has been around for a little while. WebEx has been around a really long time. But all these technologies, people are using them and they're really adopting them, so that's good. And now that these people can leave these overpriced, overrated, high density cities where everybody's afraid of the race war, the riots, the civil unrest, and infection, because the more dense we are, right, where you can't socially distance, the more likely you are to get sick. on mass transit, in elevators, etc. People are moving to the suburbs. And so, so a lot is changing for sure. Here's a great example. Anybody watching can just go to YouTube, or not YouTube. Anybody watching on YouTube can go to U-Haul, the U-Haul website, and you can just do this yourself. I did this 2 days ago, and the cost, it shows the migration pattern, okay? Because it shows the cost of renting U-Haul's largest truck, the 26-foot truck, and going from New York City to where I live in Palm Beach, Florida, okay? If you want to rent that truck that way, it's going to cost you $3,400, okay? But if you want to go the other direction, and you'll leave that truck in New York, which is where they need it because everybody's moving out, okay?
Yep.
You can rent that same truck for almost $1,400 or $1,300 less. Okay, so it's a third less expensive if you'll leave the truck in New York than if you'll take it out, right? So it just shows you right there. That's the moving pattern. Thoughts?
Incredible. Now, a couple of thoughts, and you mentioned a number of them. One of the things that you mentioned in the beginning was the wealth transfer. You know, and that was something that was already starting to happen for folks that are adopting the more digital world early on. It's amplified the wealth transfer. Just put rocket fuel on it. The other thing is the trends in motion, people leaving certain states to move to other states. That was already happening before that. It's just amplified that too, right? Put rocket fuel absolutely on that.
You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that was already happening too, when we take a macro picture from governments and economies, if you look at the majority of the world, the control structure, as I like to refer to it, has become more and more involved. I mean, you look at Europe, you look at, Asia and so forth. They've been slowly creeping in and taking over more sections of society and exerting more control with folks. And this has just put more than rocket fuel on this. Where literally they are telling which businesses can stay open or close, how you can conduct business. Even if your business is open, you can only seat 25% of people in your restaurant, and they have to sit outside. And by the way, if they come in, if they take a mask, then they have to take it off. And then when they use the restroom, they have to put on a mask.
Yeah,
I mean, it's levels that I think if you and I would have had this conversation before, we would have laughed if somebody told us that this would be a reality, right? And it just absolutely amplified a lot of trends that were already in motion.
You are absolutely right. And guess what? It's going to get a lot worse because the contact tracing that's going on with the phones now, okay? They're using the phones to trace our contacts and trace where we're going, right? And by the way, that's my dog. Isn't she cute? And so they're doing that through the phone. But guess what's next? They're going to do it through chip implants. I've done several shows on that over the years. That's been coming for a long time. And now they're going to have a justification. They're going to have an excuse to do it. So governments know who you're with, where you are. Of course, big disgusting tech companies like Google are going to share this data because they're lobbying the government for favor to not break up their disgusting monopolies. And Facebook, they'll do the same thing. And so they're in bed with the government. They're just a proxy with the government to violate people's civil rights. And the government has great cover to do it now. They have a very good excuse to do this because, on one hand, it's sensible, right? We can all see that, look, if you're around someone who's infected, I don't want you to be around me for 2 weeks. Right? So, we all understand the way viruses work. And so this has just been it's a boon to the control freaks, and the central planners. It really is. And in China, they've already had for a while now that social scoring model. And, that's going to proliferate around the world, sadly, too. So
coming to a country near you, right?
Coming to a country near you. That's a great way to put it. The other thing that's coming is more digital currency. Now, I have another podcast called the CryptoCast, where I've been following crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all those.
Yep.
And I've never been much of a big believer in that. And I've always said, I hope I'm wrong, because I would love nothing more than to see a decentralized money that's not controlled by central powers in the hands of the people in the marketplace, as it should be. But I've always said that I don't think it will work ultimately, because the biggest product any government in any part of the world has is its currency. That's the product of governments. Okay, it's just like if you had a factory that made shoes or a factory that made widgets, right? That's your product. You don't want any competition for your product, right? You want as little competition as possible. Why would any government allow a cryptocurrency to compete with their product? They're just, and they'll let it go for a while, but ultimately they'll subvert it, squish it, do whatever they do, right? So I've never been a believer that it's really going to work, but the cryptocurrency that will work is the one that is published by the government. And when I say government, I mean any government, not just the U.S., but backed, by that government and their central bank, our Federal Reserve in our case. So it'll be a digital dollar. And there's a good excuse for this too, because number one, of course, we can completely lose our spending privacy. They can, if anybody's acting badly, they can just shut them off with a click of a mouse and make them broke instantaneously. And then also, I've seen several articles saying that money that you handle is moving the infection around. And so, there's a perfect excuse to have a digital dollar. And China is rushing to have their digital currency right now. And, the US is kind of acting like, well, we got to catch up to China. They can't beat us.
and we are.
This will not be good for people.
No, to your point. So we've covered cryptocurrencies here since 2016, and I just want to share something with you. You might have seen this already. What I try to position myself for too is not necessarily look at bills that are being signed by the Senate or just Congress in general. I look at bills that are submitted, because there's a lot of things in that. It might sit for a while, and then it gets pushed through when they need it. So there was recently a bill submitted, and folks at home, go to congress.gov. It's S3571 Banking for All Act.
There is a massive demand for affordable housing across the United States that far outpaces the current supply. More and more people will be renting in droves, and it's putting the squeeze on an already tight rental market. This provides a unique opportunity in a recession-resistant and also the highest yielding investment niche in real estate right now, mobile home parks. Four Peaks Capital Partners has been successfully investing in this proven recession-resistant sector for years, providing investors with predictable passive income and capital appreciation. Four Peaks Capital Partners offer private real estate investments for accredited investors to passively invest in this real estate niche. To learn more how to protect your investment portfolio and at the same time generate predictable income passively, visit privateincomeinvesting.com. That's privateincomeinvesting.com.
So sounds very, very nice. Banking for All Act.
Yeah, sounds very democratic. Banking for all.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually introduced. So this was introduced on the 23rd of March, 2020, and it hasn't passed the Senate for folks that look this up. So it's just been introduced, but this tells you where all of this is going. So if you scroll down, you really have to scroll down in this book to look at to find the little things there. So here's one of the things that I find particularly interesting rather, is that they're looking to assign a digital dollar wallet to every citizen and every business in the United States by January 1st, 2021, which of course is just a date in the introduction of it.
Wow.
In this bill, so this is already on the books. And again, this isn't to say that it's going to happen January 1st, 2021. It just gives you an idea where the thinking is
Yes.
lined up with. And where
you're absolutely right. It tells you where we're going. You know, it
right.
doesn't have to pass today, but once these things get into the ether, right, and people start talking about them, they eventually, you know, maybe it won't be that bill, but it'll be another congressman that comes up with some other similar bill, right?
Yep.
And that's what's happening in my former home state, the Socialist Republic of California, that everybody's leaving, just
Yep.
like New York. They've got, you know, basically 4 big tax increases on the books, you know, and at least a couple of them will happen, and then the other 2 will happen later, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's absolutely scary. But the point is, for investors, you know, it's like Wayne Gretzky said, I skate to where the puck is going.
Yep.
And where the puck is going is to inexpensive suburban markets where people can have a good quality of life. They can socially distance. They can have a yard, a house, the whole thing, and live nicely for a lot less money. And you know, even if their salary is cut, you know, they're still way ahead if they've got anything approaching one of these New York or Los Angeles types of salaries, right? Even and you know, they could live in Atlanta, they could live in, you know, one of our Florida markets. All of these markets that we've been recommending to real estate investors for the past 16 years this has just made it even better. You know, this is where we've been telling people to invest for the last 16, 17 years. And it's really an incredible opportunity. COVID has made it even better opportunity. If you look at this chart, this was the last one up, and I shared my screen again. It shows you home builders. Home builders are so confident right now, MC. They haven't been this confident since 1998. Okay, home builders are booming because there is a huge demand for housing. There was already a housing shortage, no question about that. But now it's even more pronounced in these suburban markets where properties make sense, where you can get good cash flow as an investor. You know, people go to jasonhartman.com and they look at these properties and they buy them, and you know, they're getting a property for maybe $100,000 to $200,000 that'll produce nice cash flow. And this is where everybody's moving. They're moving to all these markets that we recommend. So really, really bullish sign there. This is interesting too. And it's not positive really, but it says the majority of US young adults now live with their parents. Okay.
Wow.
And it shows you during the Great Depression back in the 30s, okay, we had a peak during the Depression of 43% of these adults 18 to 29 years old living at home with their parents, okay? That actually went up in the years following to 48%. That was the peak before. Now, during the Great Recession, 12 years ago, depending on how you look at it, 44%, okay? But now 52%.
Wow.
Now, why does this matter? Well, this matters because number one, it's a proxy for how the economy is going for these people. They can't afford to be out on their own and have their own home, right? That's one thing it says. But the other thing it shows us is it shows us this very large shadow demand for housing, okay? Because eventually these people will move out, okay? And, you know, maybe they'll be 26 years old or even 32 or 35 years old, but they're not going to live with their parents forever, okay? Nobody's going to do that. And so this is a whole giant segment of the population that represents a whole bunch of new housing demand that isn't even being seen right now. And the market right now is absolutely crazy. Bidding wars, multiple offers. People can't get enough properties right now. In my business, I just wish we had more inventory. We could sell 3 times the number of properties if we had more to sell. We just don't have much inventory. There's a huge shortage of supply, of good supply in good markets.
Yeah, absolutely. In the right markets, right? And as you mentioned, if you know where the puck is going, and which you guys have been recommended, then obviously then you would be well positioned for this. And now you're seeing all of this momentum coming towards you instead of chasing it and bidding and trying to find an angle to get in on it. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. Skate to where the puck is going. That's for sure.
So a couple of questions for you, or just maybe your comments on it. So one of the things that you mentioned, I think 2020 was kind of a very enlightening year, if I could put it in that term, for a lot of folks, because they've started to realize that not everything is seen as presented. So let's start with the media. You've been on the forefront of new media. A early adopter of podcasting in the audio manner. You've done a phenomenal job with all your other shows covering the cerveza bug and much, much more. I think people have started to realize too, you've heard the term fake news, and it was kind of like half truths, maybe there's a little element of truth in it, but I think a lot of folks have started to realize that it's just basically there to completely misinform a lot of folks of what's happening. And maybe your comment on that. One of the things that you mentioned was, for example, the vaccine that's coming out. Now, there's many different opinions and views on that, and many different independent research studies. That is not presented. It's only one side that's being presented of it. So that was one of the things that should be a red flag for anyone, because I've always had to believe that if you truly want to educate someone, you have to tell them exactly what it is, how it works, and the pros and the cons, and share different points of view upon it, and give them different types of information and let them come to their own conclusion, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, we are in an era of massive censorship where companies that should be totally ashamed of themselves, like Twitter and Facebook and Google or Alphabet, they are just censoring speech. Whatever doesn't agree with their leftist agenda, they're censoring it. They're saying it's not true. I don't know if you've noticed this, but literally messages are being deleted, private messages from my Facebook Messenger. Yep. You cannot send certain messages inside of Messenger. I'm not saying posting them publicly, just sending them to other people. They delete them. Now, their computers are looking in my inbox. Now, is that happening on Gmail, the most widely used email program? Probably. I mean, what ends up in your spam folder? Do you really have that much time to pay attention to it? Google's sifting through your emails. They probably just never get there a lot of times. And you just, you can't hear the dogs that don't bark. You don't know what you don't hear. And voters don't know what they never hear or see either. So we're definitely living in a 1984 era of Orwellian. It's very scary, the time we're living in. It really is, with these massive companies that have revenue larger than the GDP of many countries.
We are living through unprecedented times, and many experts say that in the coming months and years, we're about to see some of the best real estate opportunities of our lifetime. Who's going to benefit the most from these opportunities? Those with access to capital, which is where the Real Estate Accelerator comes in. Brought to you by Good Egg Investments, the Real Estate Accelerator is an online course and mastermind that will give you everything you need to raise private capital for real estate syndications. Through building a killer brand that attracts the right investors, you'll be able to take advantage of the upcoming opportunities and scale your business. To learn more, check out cashflowninja.com/good egg.
Yet they're totally unregulated. There's think about it. If you go and you pick up the phone and you have a conversation with someone, and the phone company doesn't like what you say, they don't have the right to cut you off as long as you pay the bill. Yep. That's because they're regulated under common carrier laws. Okay. And I'm not a legal expert, so don't quote me on this, but my understanding of it is that they have to provide service to anyone who's paying for it. Okay. Now, the big disgusting tech companies will say, well, our service is free. Well, it's not free. Okay. Because anytime something is free, you know that you're paying for it. You're the product. Okay. If you're not paying with money, okay, you're the product. And so they're just using and abusing our information. And it's absolutely pathetic what they're doing. And the Trump administration made a stab at that a couple of months ago with an executive order, but that's a drop in the bucket. It's hardly going to change anything. So what needs to happen is these companies need to be regulated under common carrier laws, or they need to make their algorithms public so that all the computer geeks out there in the world can go in and see, why do we see certain things in our news feed and not see other things? Why when we search on Google, why do we get certain results and not other results, right? But of course, they're going to say this is a trade secret and, we can't make it public, right? Or the third thing is they just need to be busted up under antitrust laws. It's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, can you imagine having one company control 70 to 75% of the entire human race's internet traffic? That's insanity.
Yep.
That we have this. I mean, at least Europe is cracking down and so forth with fines. But, the executives don't pay those fines; the shareholders do. So they can just do whatever they want. If they get a fine, big deal. It's part of their business plan. They don't care about the law.
And the lesson too that I think one should take away from the social media experiment and see eventually that this was a massive Trojan horse.
Of course it was. Yeah.
It was very cool. Everyone was on it. Make it very user friendly. It's like a little country club or a little club with everyone in it. So everybody gets lured in, and then all of a sudden, now you're playing in someone else's sandbox, and they decide.
Yep.
They make up the rules of what's nice and what's not nice, and if it's not nice, you're out of the sandbox. So I think that a lot of folks should be, number one, aware that where this is all going, even though, I sometimes even say that crypto, even though the technology, blockchain technology is phenomenal technology and has the ability to do a lot of good and be a complete game changer in the future in a lot of industries, the cryptocurrencies are going to be made very attractive, so they kind of get people to adopt that and utilize it. And then all of a sudden it then gets moved into a different sandbox where you now have digital, central bank cryptocurrencies by all countries. So you just have to see the big picture. But to your point, it's simply very important for everyone. If you're looking to protect yourself, your family, your business, your investments, and grow your wealth in the coming years, it's very important to understand that, number one, there's so much censorship going on. I mean, this is a whole podcast episode by itself, just what's happening on YouTube.
I know it is.
In my personal experience there, if there's certain keywords in, you're demonetized, some videos are removed, etc. But then there's alternative options to build it on. So just be aware that you're not getting all the different types of information on any topic: money, investing, cryptocurrencies, medical information. It's all being very streamlined and skewed one way. So for you to survive and thrive, you have to get access to all the information and then form and make your own decision on that.
Right, but you can't get access to all the information because the information is controlled by a few big companies.
Yep.
So
you're going to have to go to BitChute. You're going to have to go to places on the internet like Library, which is all decentralized, built on blockchain. You're going to have to go to Minds, different types of social media platforms. And another thing too, if you're purely building your business, your digital business on Facebook and YouTube, that could be taken away from you at any given point in time too when you're not playing.
And it has been taken away from many, and I live in fear of that all the time, and it's unbelievable that any of us should have to. You have almost no recourse. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the government could never do that to you. right? That would be a violation of your civil rights. But a private company can do whatever they want. And listen, I'm all for private companies. I love capitalism, but this is not capitalism. This is duopolies. It's semi-monopoly environment we're in. Okay, so it's not capitalism in the farthest stretch. So
Absolutely.
yeah, we'll see. Let's hope things change. But it's been great talking about it, and keep getting the word out, MC.
Absolutely. Really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of this information with our audience. And where can folks, again, Jason, where can they follow you? Where can they stay in touch? And where can they catch all of your many different shows? Because you cover a lot of different topics, which is very, very important today for anyone looking to survive and thrive in this current environment.
Yeah. My main website is jasonhartman.com, but also for your listeners, I've got a nice freebie. And this is a no strings attached free thing. It's a little mini book that I put together on pandemic investing that specifically addresses some of the pandemic related issues. And you can get that at pandemicinvesting.com. So just pandemicinvesting.com. Many people can't believe I actually scored that domain name. It's pretty good.
That's very, very, very good. That's good stuff. Definitely check it out.
And then jasonhartman.com and my podcast and YouTube channel are all there as well. My main podcast is called The Creating Wealth Show.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing all of this valuable information with my listeners and my viewers out there. For listeners and viewers out there, thank you so much for spending your most valuable resource, your time, once again with me on the Cashflow Ninja. Again, check out all of our past shows with Cashflow Ninjas such as Jason at cashflowninja.com. Until next time, live infinitely.